That's really the strength of a Foo Fighters record, actually, how the drum set parts are. They're not just played, they're orchestrated. And there's a lot of thoughtfulness that goes into it.
Welcome back to Foos Files, the 1 year anniversary episode. Yep, 1 whole year of doing this podcast, which has just been an unbelievable labour of love being able to bring this to you every week. So yeah, it's a pretty momentous week all in all, 1 year of Foos Files, and it's the album release, of course. Your favourite toy is finally out on Friday. It's as if we planned it all to happen in the same week. We really didn't, but I wish I could say we did. So to tie it all together, what I've decided to do this week is dip into the Foos Files archives of 50 plus episodes and delve into what it's actually like to work on a Foo Fighters album. For those of you who have been listening for a while, you'll be aware of some of the really cool interviews that I've had the privilege of being able to do with people who've been in that unique position, that vantage point of going into the studio with the band. I know I did say last week that I would do a bit more on the set list for the forthcoming tour, which stirred a lot of strong opinions when we did a little bit on it in the last episode. We will get round to doing that, but given it's the big album release this week, I thought it just seemed appropriate to focus on the Foo Fighters in the studio and what we've been able to draw out about that recording process so far, going all the way back to that first album, which Dave Grohl famously recorded pretty much on his own with the assistance of his producer friend Barrett Jones. Now, speaking of Barrett, a long-time friend of Dave's from their Washington DC days, we're going to start by going all the way back to episode 2 when he talks about Dave's special talent for writing and recording coming to the fore during those sessions for the debut album, which, of course, was completed in just 5 days.
Dave has this special talent that he doesn't, think of all the possibilities or all the different things that something could do. He makes a choice of how a riff should go, how a drum beat should go, how a bass line should go, and then does it. He's very good at, doing that. He's never like, oh, maybe I should have done it this way, or maybe I should change this little thing. And he just knows exactly how it should go. And that's a very rare trait. The reason we could do that record it was actually 5 days. The reason we could do that is because of all the work we had already done. Like more than, I think, 90% of that record he'd already recorded with me on my 8-track in that same manner. So he already knew the songs. We knew, we had a routine of recording that was, and it was almost like a game to him. I would go in, I would set up all the sounds, get everything going. That would take I think it took like 2 or 3 hours at the studio, which is pretty fast. And then once everything's set up, he just goes and plays a drum track, comes into the control room, lays down a couple guitar tracks, puts a bass track down, maybe a guitar lead, and then moves on to the next song. And then the last 2 days was all vocals, and a rough mix.
So Barrett gave us a window into Dave's mindset, which enables him to just get things done. But of course, he would later evolve as a recording artist, not only bringing the other Foo Fighters members into the fold, but also inviting in other guest musicians to expand the scope of a particular record. So what is it like to work in that environment? Well, the Wasting Light record seems like a timely place to start because, just like the forthcoming album, Your Favourite Toy, it was recorded in the intimate setting of Dave's home studio. Multi-instrumentalist Jessy Greene was our guest for episode 21, where she told us about her experience of joining those sessions where she added violin parts to the song I Should Have Known. And she spoke of the warm environment created not just by the Foo Fighters, but also by legendary producer Butch Vig.
I was there hanging out for a bit, and I would just, be an observer and listen. And then he would say, I want you to play in this song. And we would work out parts. He was very open and wasn't like, just play this. Never. Dave's never like that. It's always like everything's a collaboration with him. He definitely, of course, has ideas, really great string ideas. So does Rami. Rami's like an incredible string arranger. And so it was very, I think part of the reason that he wanted to do it in his space is the authenticity, just to be real and just to be like, this is laying like his heart on the table, and to like, it's kind of exposing of everybody's like, they're just real down to earth and real. I mean, even with all their success, I think they've really been able to keep a strong focus of what matters in life, which is music and family and all this stuff. I mean, we all go through our things, but they're very, very solid people.
And the other thing which must have been an eye-opener is being produced by Butch Vig, the legendary
I know.
Butch Vig. What was he like?
He was amazing. He was so, because honestly, recording the violin, sometimes I've been, like I've cried with producers, and like it can be really rough. It can be really rough. So Butch Vig is the opposite of that. He was so like calm and very, he worked with me, and he was very, I mean, it was just such a positive experience all around. Very supportive, which you need sometimes as a string player in the studio.
There was quite a roll call of guest musicians on that album too. So you had Chris Novoselic and Bob Mould and Fee Waybill and people like that. So in some pretty cool company there as well in terms of guest appearances.
Yeah, I know. And yeah, Chris is incredible. Such a beautiful human. And yeah, it was, I mean, pretty much, I mean, there's so much like life-altering experiences in this time for me that was definitely one of them. It's meeting all those great people and performers and being a part of something that was so magical and special.
And that sense of wanting to create the best possible working environment was also palpable when our episode 34 guest, Audrey Riley, pitched up at Studio 606 to work with Dave and producer Gil Norton on string arrangements for the 2007 album Echoes, Silence, Patience and Grace.
He's a really special, creative human being. I thought I've really liked him. Lovely, lovely, lovely man. Did everything he could think of to put me at my ease, to explain himself well so that there was no confusion, or, sometimes things can get so frustrated when languages aren't clear and stuff, musical languages. I remember that at one point he noticed that I liked eating sweets. So the next day when I went to my side room, there was a whole bowl of different assorted chews and sweets and things he just observed and wanted me to have the best working situation.
So if that positive and welcoming studio environment is geared towards optimum creativity, then what about crafting the actual sound? It's often pointed out that Dave Grohl's approach to writing and recording is done very much through the lens of a drummer, which sounds kind of obvious given his background, but as those who've been welcomed into his world have observed, it makes for quite a unique rhythmic puzzle. This feeling's shared not only by Audrey Riley, but by one of the greatest musicians ever to sit behind a drum kit, the legendary Omar Hakim, who was the guest percussionist on the 10th Foo Fighters album, Medicine at Midnight. And in Omar's case, he was plugging into not only Dave's vision for the drums and percussion, but also the wizardry of the late, great Taylor Hawkins.
I flew out to LA, to the Valley. They had rented a house to do the session, a really cool house. And they different rooms are being used for different things. One room had guitar amps, various guitar amps in it that were mic'd. there was another room right next to the control room. I could see Dave was set up in there to do vocals. Also, there was a guitar up there. There was this other cool kind of loungy room upstairs where they had all the gear, all of the recording stuff set up. Greg Kirsten producing. And then the drums were downstairs in this really cool living room space with high ceilings. And so my percussion rig was also set up in the other side of that room. And then there was a small room. And I had rented a bunch of stuff from Drum Doctor because I wasn't sure what was going to be needed. So I had Drum Doctor bring hand drums and all kinds of shakers and crazy steel brake drums that were painted that you play with brass mallets, and all kinds of different wood blocks and plastic blocks, and just a insane cacophony of percussion instruments, just kind of being ready for everything. Tambourines with heads on them, headless tambourines, weird shaped tambourines. It was really fun. So they would give me a bunch of tracks, and then I would just try stuff.
Where does the percussion kind of come into it in terms of the process? Oh,
I was definitely playing to Taylor's drums. Everything had already been recorded. It was really fun to play with those raw drum tracks in your headphones, to hear the approach to things, and how he and Dave orchestrate the drum parts. And that's really the strength of a Foo Fighters record, actually, how the drum set parts are. They're not just played, they're orchestrated. And there's a lot of thoughtfulness that goes into it. And they always come up with some really cool parts. And so it was fun for me to kind of fit these elements in between what Taylor had played. You know what I mean?
I packed up my gear and went to LA and moved into the Foo Fighters studio where they were working with Gil. And sat in the side room with my keyboard and my gear and talked to Dave, who had really fantastic concepts for the arrangements, which I understood over the time that I was there. It was a very short time. Were coming from his playing of the drums, that when he plays the drums, he hears these lines are leaping out. So he was very open to what I thought could also be in there, but he very gently and firmly steered me towards the things that he could hear and wanted and would be right. So I sat in the side room and did this. And every now and again, Gil and David come in and asked to hear where we were up to. And I can't remember how long we were there for. It was maybe only 3 days or something, but we just chipped away at it until we'd got what was working. And I listened to the monitor mix of Home the other night, actually. It just popped up randomly in my iPlayer, and I realised that everything that David pulled out of me, Dave and Gil had pulled out of me for the strings, were absolutely right. They were the string arrangement that anybody would hear listening to that track. It's what the lyrics are talking about. It's beautiful. And for The Pretender, I love talking to my students about this, because when I'm talking about how you might contribute to a track like that, and I show them the audio file and I go, okay, it's completely full. Look, it's just a block of blue. Where are the strings going? There isn't anywhere. But there is. It's almost like you're on a train journey and there's two contrasting scenes going on. So you turn your head and you look out at the window, and there's something going past that's at one tempo, and that's the strings. And then you turn your head forward and you're back on the train and it's pile driving down the tracks. What a beautiful way to conceive of a string arrangement. It was Dave's idea that rather than trying to smash the strings into an already really busy track, that there would be moments where it would just break and you would go to strings, reflect, and then come back to the track again. Really beautiful, really clever.
As you get further into the recording process, then there's the detail, the complexity, and the tonality of the band, with multiple guitar parts, for example, fighting for their place in the mix. Well, our episode 32 guest, Omar Hakim, talks us through the unique three-pronged attack in the Foo Fighters, bringing together the sounds of Dave Grohl, Pat Smear, and Chris Shiflett.
It's the way they orchestrate three guitar players in that band. You know what I mean? And everybody has like a voice and a purpose and a tonality that kind of makes up the overall sound of the band, right? And so it's like, I don't know, I kind of see Dave as kind of like the main rhythm player. But then it's fun because Pat kind of brings the growl to the thing. You know, he just, a guitar in his hands, just goes nuts. You know what I mean? And then, of course, Chris, you know, he's got you on everything. He's got you on the solo stuff, on the melodic stuff, on the clean stuff, but he can on the dirty shit. I mean, he's, you know, it's a really cool balance of how those three sounds make up the overall sound of the band.
Like Omar, Audrey Riley has a storied musical CV, which includes working with artists such as The Smiths, Nick Cave, Coldplay, Muse, and The Cure. But having observed the Foo Fighters, and in particular Dave Grohl at close quarters during that fleeting visit to LA in 2007, it's an experience that she often holds up as a shining example to her students at the Institute of Contemporary Music Performance.
Another time I was lucky enough to walk past the live room and he was practicing drums, and this is where I got an insight into how he was working, because I may have projected this because of the working situation, but it sounded to me like every hit of the drums was part of a line of a song, so that when he's playing, it felt to me like it isn't just a drum part, it's the whole song. He's writing a song from all the different rhythms and hits and stuff, and the timbres and the tonalities. Like I said, I may have projected that because I may have wanted to see that, but certainly I hold him up as an example when sometimes students of mine who are drummers go, no, you know, I'm just a drummer, you know, we just hit things. And I go, no. Now let's have a look at Dave Grohl. He's a drummer, but he's also a musician. And there's a difference, you know, so the approach is integrated. I think that's what I'm saying. He's a composer, he's a musician, he's a creative, he's a songwriter, but he's got different ways of communicating.
So that's just a small glimpse into what it's like to work on a Foo Fighters album that we've been able to bring you here on Foos Files over the past 12 months. And hopefully it just whets the appetite a little now for Friday, when we finally get to hear the new record in its entirety. I'll actually be setting off on holiday early on Friday morning, so I'm looking forward to getting Your Favourite Toy queued up on Spotify for the long drive to my destination. And then when I get back, the vinyl should have hopefully landed in my letterbox by then. Anyway, I will be back next week with a review episode, my verdict, and most importantly, your views on the album. So please do get in touch. I want to hear your thoughts, not just on the album itself, but I'd also really love to hear from those of you who are heading to the various listening parties that are taking place. Remember, it's foosfilespod@gmail.com by email, or at foosfilespod on Instagram. So that's it, really. It just leaves me to say a huge thank you to everyone who has supported the pod throughout the year, whether you've been listening or been on as a guest or just even messaged or interacted. Every little conversation or message or interaction makes this whole thing really worthwhile. And now the world awaits, doesn't it? Foo Fighters' studio album, number 12, Your Favourite Toy. It's out on Friday, and I don't know about you, but I can't wait. So enjoy release day. I'll be back next week and we can finally talk about it all. Take care, and I'll see you next time.